Thanks, Tony. Um, because it seems to me that Jefferson's attitude toward the natural world is completely what's been helpful as far as getting through this week. Just, yeah, really thinking about the fact that the natural world doesn't care a jot if you survive. It's
Right.
just it's not something that is even possible to think about. Um, and that there's a lot of beauty as well as a lot of suffering and hardship that goes along. But I remember it's like I think probably what I'll take from this whole experience, you know how there's always something weird that lodges in your memory, is like one night, probably just a couple of days into it, when once it gets dark at 5 p.m., it was just pitch black, you know, and we couldn't go anyplace. We did have heat, but we didn't have power, hot water, anything like that. And just going to bed at like 7, and that's a long time till morning. That's a long time till you can see some daylight again. But just kind of lying there in the dark and doing my yoga breathing and then waking up off and on, like I'd wake up and it would be 10 p.m. I'm like, uh-oh, better go back to sleep for a while, you know, and then wake up and then it'd be midnight. And it's like, well, there's a while to go yet, but just all night long. And it was peaceful and it was kind of endless. And it was just so, so, so dark. And there wasn't even really a moon, you know. So that's probably what I'm going to remember is just those endless nights when one night we slept for 13 hours in a row and finally groggily got up about 6:30 a.m.,
You
staggered
look very well
around.
rested, both of you.
Yeah.
In the pre-electric days, people used to have something they called a second sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, the nights were so long that it led itself to that.
Yeah. I remember there was a New Yorker article about that some years ago, about how people would wake up for a couple hours in the middle of the night and read or pray or do whatever, you know. Yeah,
I've
that was
gotten
that
I've
was
gotten so that I wake up around 3 o'clock, somewhere between anywhere between 2:30 and 3:30 or 4, and to load the stove up
Mm.
because when it's this cold as it is now, if it's in the 20s or something, I wouldn't do it. But when it gets closer to zero or below zero, like it's going to be tonight, I have to get up to reload the stove to keep the house from getting too cold. And then
yeah.
our wood boiler takes over in the middle of the night sometimes.
That's just so amazing. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid reading Laura Ingalls Wilder, and it's like the terror of having no way to light the fire, you know, and going to the neighbors to get a live coal, something like that. Now I understand what that would be about, you
Yeah.
know. Well, so maybe we can look at some Robinson Jeffers poems. Um, Probably in this screen share. Would that be possible? I
Sure.
finally
Uh,
found my book, which is like really ancient. It's Roan Stallion and Other Poems, and it's kind of torn up. I got it from some library giveaway, and it's got Roan Stallion, but it's also got several other kind of long narrative poems, which are frankly pretty horrible. You know, I mean, it's just no three. There's like several. Um, but it's also got a few of the early, really great ones. So we'll look at some of what we didn't look at last time.
yeah, let me know what you want to look at, Dan.
Let's pull it up and then scroll down a little bit through. I think we talked about the first four of them.
Okay. Uh,
Oh, this is a new one that I just sent. Let's look
yeah,
at this.
this is a new one. So,
Yeah, but let's
I'll,
look at it. Okay, you want to?
okay, sure.
I just discovered this because our friend Beth Ann does this thing, which is very nice. It's where people get together in a coffee shop and read silently for 45 minutes, and then they just chat a little bit. It's quite wonderful. So I took my Robinson Jeffers book over there last night and discovered this poem, which I really like. So, birds, the fierce musical cries of a couple of sparrowhawks hunting on the headland hovering and darting their heads northwestward, prick like silver arrows shot through a curtain, the noise of the ocean trampling its granite. Their red backs gleam under my window around the stone corners. Nothing gracefuler, nothing nimbler in the wind. Westward, the wave gleaners, the old gray seagoing gulls are gathered together, the northwest wind wakening their wings to the wild spirals of the wind dance. Fresh as the air, salt as the foam, play birds in the bright wind, fly falcons, forgetting the oak and the pine wood, come gulls from the Carmel sands and the sands at the river mouth, from Lobos and out of the limitless power of the mass of the sea. For a poem needs multitude, multitudes of thoughts, all fierce, all flesh eaters, musically clamorous, bright hawks that hover and dart headlong, and ungainly gray hungers fledged with desire of transgression, salt slimed beaks from the sharp rock shores of the world and the secret waters. I just think that's gorgeous. And, you know, I wonder, with a quick read, let me ask you, what do you notice about how this poem is structured or anything that you notice about it?
Oh,
The alliteration is quite striking,
Yeah.
and there's some formations of multiple words, which are very much like Anglo-Saxon poetry: wind dance, wave gleaners,
mhm.
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that.
River mouth, flesh eaters, absolutely. Rock shores of the world. It is very much like Anglo-Saxon, which is totally appropriate because of the kind of rockiness and thorniness of the world that he's writing about, you know. Yeah, and especially the alliteration. It's like that's almost his guiding principle here, you know. Hunting on the headland, hovering and darting their heads northwestward, and then trampling its granite, their redbacks gleam, nothing gracefuler, nothing nimbler. Westward, the wave gleaners, you know, and then gray gulls gathered, wind wakening wings, wild wind. Yeah, it's really an organizing principle of this poem. This, of course, is free verse. It's very Whitmanic with its long lines, you know, but it's just piling image upon image upon image. And then notice the turn, which I think is really beautiful. For a poem needs multitude, you know, that surprised me the first time I read it. Um, it's like he's describing birds. He's just describing birds, and then all of a sudden he has this thought or this realization about what fills a poem, a multitude, multitudes of thoughts, all fierce, all flesh eaters, musically clamorous. And then he goes back to the birds, you know, um, from the sharp rock shores of the world and the secret waters. Notice how often his poems end evoking either the ocean or the night or death. It's like very often his imagination returns to those things at the ends of poems. And this is another example. So, yeah, I just was really pleased to find this poem. It isn't one that I had known before, but I thought, wow, that would be one that I would really like to share. Anybody else have things that you notice or that you want to point out about it?
A lot of present participles. That's something else like Whitman.
Yeah. Hunting, hovering, darting. Yeah, trampling. Uh-huh. Wakening. So this ongoing action all the way through, clamoring. Yeah, yeah.
It's really, a very strong image of the way it is to be standing at the edge of a cliff in Big Sur and looking out. You know, it's just this wildness, and it is present tense because in present participles because it doesn't stop. It just goes on forever.
Yeah.
That's kind
If
of what
we're lucky, yeah.
it struck me that in fact I think in almost everything we've read, he's essentially at the edge, at the margin of
Hmm.
behind him, and he's looking always outward. And it reminds me, I had one of my beloved teachers, my seventh grade teacher, who stayed a dear friend until he passed away a couple years ago at 90 something. But he always lived in the last house on the road.
Oh, yeah.
I knew him. How they somehow managed to be in the last house on the road, and
That's really neat. Yeah.
that's a little bit what this is. This is like it's right at the edge, and he's looking outward, and yet, he is in his window looking out. Uh,
Hmm.
it says under his window around the corner.
Hmm.
He's,
Yeah.
he,
And his window in that tower is right on the edge, you know.
yeah, well, of course, it's not quite anymore. It's one block back, but I guess when
Well, that's pretty close to the edge. At least it's probably not going to fall into the ocean, but it's pretty liminal, this liminal space, you know, between the world of humans and the world of the ocean. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really nice thing to point out. And such a poet of place. I'm obviously really interested in the poetry of place. And this is so, so imbued with a sense of place, you know, it's like it could only be written there.
I
Yeah.
mean, it really, as I say, because my mother lived in the house, the one that was really out on that point, for some time during World War II. And if you read a little bit about Jean Arthur's life, she became something of a hermit in her later years in that house. And I never was inside. I've been, up to the door, but never inside. But this is really what it's like to that place is very much captured in this. And the other thing that it reminds me is, and I think I've mentioned this before, during World War II, there was a submarine watch station out on the point.
Wow.
There were people like my mother described them as soldiers, so maybe they were, but they had a kind of a not like a little dugout place in the rocks that they would sit and watch. And my mother and Jean Arthur's mother and I guess Jean Arthur, when she was home from Hollywood, would take hot coffee out to them in the night. But they must have spent a lot of time looking out at this very very sight, the birds and I don't know that they ever saw submarines trying to get into Monterey Bay. Uh,
Wow.
they were watching, and
Yeah.
this is you think of this vision and what it must be like to sit out there for hours looking out at the ocean and the birds.
Yeah. The last phrase here, when we get to Elizabeth Bishop, we'll read one of my favorite poems by her is called At the Fish Houses. Notice this, because the same imagery is going to come up at the end of that incredibly beautiful poem, The Sharp Rock Shores of the World and the Secret Waters. Just notice that she's writing about Nova Scotia. It's a very, very different place, but it's similar in that way. Yeah. So I just noticed that because I'm like, what does this remind me of? And that's what it reminds me of. Just like I'm going to turn on our little space heater. There we go. Okay, so let's move on. Tony, can we go into the other set of poems that I sent?
What would you like? But that
Go
I
back
only have
up
two.
more.
I only have two more recent ones. What would you like from the previous ones?
I want herd hawks.
Kurt Hawk.
Herd hawks,
Okay. Um.
which is maybe his most famous poem almost, I think. Here we go.
Okay.
Thank you. So herd
Oh shit. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Um.
Herd hawks.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah, so this is a later poem. It's not in Roan Stallion. But it's incredibly famous and it's always a conversation starter when you teach it. Herd hawks. One, the broken pillar of the wing jags from the clotted shoulder. The wing trails like a banner in defeat. No more to use the sky forever, but live with famine and pain a few days. Cat nor coyote will shorten the week of waiting for death. There is game without talons. He stands under the oak bush and waits the lame feet of salvation. At night, he remembers freedom and flies in a dream. The dawns ruin it. He is strong, and pain is worse to the strong. Incapacity is worse. The curs of the day come and torment him at distance. No one but death, the Redeemer, will humble that head. The intrepid readiness, the terrible eyes. The wild God of the world is sometimes merciful to those that ask mercy, not often to the arrogant. You do not know him, you communal people, or you have forgotten him. Intemperate and savage, the hawk remembers him, beautiful and wild, the hawks and men that are dying remember him. 2, I'd sooner accept the penalties, kill a man than a hawk. But the great red tail had nothing left but unable misery from the bones too shattered for mending, the wing that trailed under his talons when he moved. We had fed him for 6 weeks. I gave him freedom. He wandered over the foreland hill and returned in the evening asking for death, not like a beggar, still-eyed with the old implacable arrogance. I gave him the lead gift in the twilight. What fell was relaxed, owl downy, soft feminine feathers. But what soared, the fierce rush. The night herons by the flooded river cried fear at its rising before it was quite unsheathed from reality. So, thoughts on this poem? I mean, it's a really powerful poem, and I think it's really problematic in a couple of ways. First of all, some people have been kind of offended that at the end he refers to the soft feminine feathers, this kind of essentialist softness of the female and then toughness and sternness and arrogance of the male. That didn't ever bother me. It still doesn't really bother me, but I notice it. The owl downy, soft feminine feathers, the softness of the body of the hawk. But the whole poem, obviously the problematic line is I'd sooner accept the penalties, kill a man than a hawk, right? So I'm just wondering, how do you respond to that?
I
Well,
can say right away that to me, it's not problematic. It seems like a perfectly natural, sincere sentiment, not a license to kill, let alone a license to murder. He's just saying that generally speaking, a human being is is a living creature whose life he values less than the life of a hawk. But these are exceptional circumstances, obviously, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it's even entirely that. I've worked some with vet school people, and it seems to me to be terribly hard to do something that causes an animal pain or loss of life because the communication is so very, very different.
Yeah.
And that even treating children for cancer, there's some sense that you are um, at least communicating with parents, but with the children to some, there's a kind of assent to it, if not consent. We talk about this in ethics, but with animals and with this hawk, the interaction is very, very different. It's a different world, and you don't know what kind of bargain you're making or what kind of, and I think you must have to have a sort of come to a sort of ethical agreement to do something that may cause an animal pain. So our vet school treats hawks that have been injured, and I wonder, it makes me wonder what someone might say reading this who has had that experience, that it's a he has a kind of bond with this hawk, a communication he feels, but it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And he is taking something on himself, um, and it just feels incredibly sad, but also um, he recognizes that he's assuming a sort of burden in making this decision. It's an ethical choice, and I think the ethical choice must be very hard when you are, if anybody who's had to put a dog to sleep or whatever. How do you know? And you have to really think. It's different. It's different.
But I think the way the hawk comes back, I mean, that was very eloquent, and I believe everything you're saying. It's fascinating too. But
Yes.
I think the fact that the hawk comes back, um,
Yeah. No, he's created a relationship there. And the hawk has accepted that relationship and is and I think that's part of what makes it so powerful. He just doesn't see a wounded hawk out somewhere and
Right.
put it out of its misery. And that's um anyway, I found this a difficult poem to read. It
The
was
Yeah.
hawk is without sin, it's just doing its thing, its natural thing, unlike people, which makes it, to me, his viewpoint quite sympathetic.
Just
Well,
yesterday, I had a tufted titmouse fly into the slider in our off our kitchen, and I was I had to keep the cat inside, but I went outside and I picked it up and tried to keep it warm because it was really cold, and it had clearly was stunned, and it looked like maybe it had broken a leg or broken a wing or something. And I held it as long as I could hold it, and I was getting cold, and I was thinking, well, geez, now have I just terrified this poor creature, because by picking it up, but it seemed okay, and I put it down, and it took a while for it to finally fly up off the porch and land in a tree nearby, and eventually it flew off. We've had that happen a fair amount, and we have ravens that we've feed and have created a relationship with, and we had a pair that had come back for several years and had raised clutches of young ravens. And a few years ago, sharp-shinned hawk. We have a family of sharp-shinned hawks also, and the sharp-shinned hawk came through and attacked the ravens. And somehow, I think it chased the female, and she collided with a branch or
Oh.
something, and she died. And this was really upsetting to us because we would talk to the ravens and they would talk back
Yeah.
and whatever. And finally, we buried it, and then I saw later that day. I saw the sharpshin attack the mate of this one again, and it was like, I mean, if I'd had my wrist rocket on hand, I would have taken a shot at it. But it's sort of we just tried to keep them apart. Every once in a while, the sharpshin will come and steal the food that we leave out for the ravens. But it's sort of, you have to find a balance,
Hmm.
and we have barred owls that come, and they will eye the birds at the bird feeder. I guess that's why they call it a bird feeder. A lot of birds eat. Sometimes they eat other birds, but um, so I can really understand this because we've had sharpshins and red tails and uh, around the house a lot, eating our chickens too, for that matter.
Yeah. I
But
mean, go ahead.
with regard to what Otis said about the innocence, remember in the Garden of Eden, what the sin is eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So human beings have the knowledge of good and evil, but animals don't share that. That's our sin, that we know the difference between right and wrong. And animals live in that Eden, in that innocence that has no knowledge of what's right and wrong.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Well,
dogs
in
are a
what
possible
Dogs and cats know
counterexample.
the difference.
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's a very interesting question. Whether you can call any animal evil, that is really a great question. And it the thing is that you do so without anthropomorphizing the
Right.
animal.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm going to come back to the hawk because in the relationship, he says, I fed this hawk for 6 weeks. So this isn't a chance encounter. This is a
Right.
long, yeah. And there's a sense over time that I can feed it, but I can't fix it.
Hmm. And it's not going to heal itself.
Yeah, it can't. Yeah, yeah. And in fact, when Laura was talking about it, I thought, vets deal with that all the time.
Hmm.
They have, it's like, I can't fix it. Is it getting, there's a point at which maybe it's time, but how do you know? And then apparently this hawk gave permission to him that it was time, which is
You know,
interesting. That's a wonderful, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tony.
with a vet too, sometimes the decision is whether or not the customer can pay the bill.
Yeah.
Something as crass as that. My first wife was a veterinary assistant, and we ended up with animals because she couldn't bear to see the animal put down just because the clients couldn't pay the bill. They find out there was a particular dog that jumped out of a pickup truck. Don't ever
Mm.
put your dogs in a pickup truck.
Mm-mm.
And broke several bones, and the bill was going to be astronomical. Or actually, they went ahead and fixed the dog, and then the bill was astronomical, and they said no, put him down. So we ended up with that dog who was
Oh,
very lovable. He was crippled, and can you say crippled when it comes to a dog? And he was disabled, and he would just chase around but fall down because his bones didn't work right. But nevertheless, just as playful as if he was whole.
What
I
kind of
think,
dog?
oh,
It was a Doberman.
Oh,
I was
That's
going to say, though, the question of euthanasia applies now to people making that choice. I've had two friends who have chosen to control the moments of their deaths recently. And, it's such a long time since people said, oh, well, humans have souls. They're not allowed to do this, but we'll do it for animals if they're really suffering. And the fierce arrogance of this hawk, I think, acknowledging that it wouldn't want to just, wait
hmm.
until it suffered applies. It's an interesting ethical question because now it applies to people making that choice.
Hmm. It's interesting. In the first section, he says cat nor coyote would shorten the week of waiting for death. And then in the second, he says we fed him for 6 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how to reconcile those two. Um,
There's 1 week left. He's had 6 weeks
oh,
of
okay.
life
He's gonna live for
anyway.
one more,
He might
maybe.
last another week, but not longer.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, it's obvious that Jeffers identifies a lot more with this hawk than he does with most people, right? These are the values, the ones that he sees in the hawk are the values that he wants to claim for himself. This kind of arrogance, this kind of nobility, this kind of strength. The wild God of the world is sometimes merciful to those that ask mercy, not often to the arrogant. You do not know him, you communal people. I mean, I guess we're all communal people. At least I'll have to speak for myself. Or you have forgotten him. Intemperate and savage, the hawk remembers him. But then again, he comes back to dying. Beautiful and wild, the hawks and men that are dying. It's like everybody at the moment of dying is not a communal person any longer. Everybody at the time of dying is faced with the wild God of the world rather than with the safety or comfort of communication or community. I think
was
it's
this poem written in wartime?
mm,
I think it was written about 1931. So
Okay.
no, I don't think it was.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have
I thought it was interesting that he titled it Hurt Hawks, plural.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I think that was, because even though it's about one hawk, I think he wants us to think about it in a more generalized way.
Mhm.
And I thought it was really poignant. The evocation of this animal that was this wild animal whose wildness was there, but its physical injuries prevented him from surviving.
yeah.
And it's really, I thought he captured that really well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem. But I do have to admit, if I were faced with a human being and a hawk, and I had to kill one of them, I I wouldn't kill the human being, you know?
But
Just
that's
think, I was just,
Depends on the
right?
human being.
yeah, exactly. I was
Yeah.
just thinking, what if we asked uh, the whoever the voice is about if it was his daughter or son? I mean, it's one thing to kill a stranger. I can
It's the
think of
trolley incident.
Yeah.
yeah, I can think of a couple right now. I'd at least I would celebrate their obituary, if not
Yeah.
kill them. But uh, a stranger is one thing, but even that, I agree with you, Ann. Even that, it's kind of a harsh thought. It to kill another human being.
Stephen Miller.
So,
Well, I wasn't going to name names.
okay. I'd like to
Remember, this is
talk
being
about
put on
that.
YouTube.
I'd like to talk about the very ending. The part that, in addition to the lead gift, which I think is a beautiful phrase, the part, what fell was relaxed, owl downy, soft feminine feathers, but what soared, the fierce rush, the night herons by the flooded river cried fear at its rising before it was quite unsheathed from reality. Um, I don't know how many of you have been with people who have died, but I could say I've been with 3 people who have died. And especially in the case of my father, I understood all these medieval illustrations where the soul is exiting from the mouth in this rush.
Mhm.
The last, and his death was a release because he had not only Alzheimer's but cancer.
Mm.
And that last breath, there was a division between body and soul, which I'm not sure I've ever actually figured out what soul might be. This last breath, something was totally released,
Wow.
and you could feel it.
Mhm.
It was so this ending, and it's interesting that the passive dead body is feminine, and then you've got this masculine force.
Mm.
But he's that way about everything, isn't he?
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's such a fantastic image of the fact that the night herons can feel and fear
Yeah.
this soul or whatever you want to call it. Feeling.
Yeah.
Leslie, that's very, I was with both my parents and my grandmother's cousin at their deaths and the same kind of experience, but even of sensing something lets go. And but interestingly, when our one of our previous Samoyeds, we had the vet come to the house, and Simca, the one we still have, had appointed himself her caregiver from when he first came as a little puppy, and she was very old at this point and frail and really had just a lot of health issues that were no longer manageable. But when the vet gave her the sedative and she went and lay down, Simca went and lay down next to her and watched her. And when he gave her the final medicine, he he looked at her and it was as if he watched the last breath and sensed the heart. And he walked all the way around and checked. He looked up and walked all the way around. And then when he took her out, we took her out to the car. He followed us.
Mm.
And when we put her in the back of the vet's car, he stood up and basically gave her a kiss goodbye. It was like, oh, people, but he was as if he saw that kind of release. He was very mindful. He knew that was it. He never looked for her after that, the way other dogs have looked when someone has.
Douglas?
Yeah, there's 2 things. One is that we have a lot of owls around here, and they can be pretty fierce too, but they are definitely downy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that when I was living in New Hampshire and I was a volunteer firefighter, saw people dying, but it was usually in traumatic circumstances, either in an automobile accident or heart attack, or something like that. But you could tell that there were a couple that were not as traumatic, where there was a peaceful moment, as they were finishing their time. It was kind of awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys reminded me when my mom died, so I was not with her. She was in a Christian Science, they're called benevolent associations because you don't get medical treatment, but you're cared for like very lovingly. And she was in a coma for 3 years. And then the day she died, her door was open and there was the nurses' station outside. It was like, a circular building and all the different rooms opened onto this central station. And she had a crystal prism in her window that we given her, just one of those little things that you hang. And they said that all of a sudden this thing just started shaking and flashing like rainbows,
Hmm.
and that was exactly when she died. It was just amazing. So, Leslie, what you say about the soul kind of whooshing forward, that's pretty much what they thought was happening with her. It was beautiful. Whew. It's a beautiful poem. Yeah, Brian.
My view of the end of the poem is somewhat more cynical. I judge the lead gift was a bullet, and it's
Yeah.
entirely possible that the night herons were reacting to the sound of the bullet echoing in the
Oh,
distance,
yeah. Yeah.
and
Oh,
that the author is inferring something out of that,
Yeah.
and he's making his own reading of what he's hearing the night herons cry.
It's ambiguous. Like it's true. It could be either
hmm.
or.
And in the same sense, he judges that the hawk is asking for death, but the hawk is not actually asking for death. He's interpreting, but it's his interpretation.
Right.
Hawk may be asking for another meal
I know, like his dinner.
because after 6 weeks, you tend to expect that. And so I have a slightly more cynical view of what's going on here, but it's still very beautiful to imagine that the spirit of the hawk takes to the air where it belongs
Yeah.
and still frightens the herons.
Yeah.
I agree about the bullet, but I think the hawk probably is asking for death, because I think you can sense something about sadness or defeat in animals. You can certainly sense something about hunger. And I just have the sense that there's an intuitive thing going on, and he's probably right about the hawk. So I never thought about the bullet, and I'm sure you're right about the bullet.
Well, let's move on. Let's look at the purse sen. Yeah, I want to do this one next time, but the purse sen. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I think this is a really beautiful poem. And this is another very Whitmanic poem, but it's a pretty eloquent expression of his view of human culture and human cities. The purse sen. Our sardine fishermen work at night in the dark of the moon. Daylight or moonlight, they could not tell where to spread the net, unable to see the phosphorescence of the shoals of fish. They work northward from Monterey, coasting Santa Cruz. Off New Year's Point or off Pigeon Point, the lookout man will see some lakes of milk color light on the sea's night purple. He points, and the helmsman turns the dark prow. The motorboat circles the gleaming shoal like a net. They close the circle and purse the bottom of the net, then with great labor haul it in. I cannot tell you how beautiful the scene is, and a little terrible then when the crowded fish know they're caught and wildly beat from one wall to the other of their closing destiny, the phosphorescent water to a pool of flame, each beautiful, slender body sheeted with flame, like a live rocket, a comet's tail wake of clear yellow flame. while outside the narrowing floats and cordage of the net, great sea lions come up to watch, sighing in the dark. The vast walls of night stand erect to the stars. Lately, I was looking from a night mountaintop on a wide city, the colored splendor, galaxies of light. How could I help but recall the Seine net gathering the luminous fish? I cannot tell you how beautiful the city appeared and a little terrible. I thought, we have geared the machines and locked all together into interdependence. We've built the great cities. Now there is no escape. We have gathered vast populations incapable of free survival, insulated from the strong earth, each person in himself helpless, on all dependent. The circle is closed and the net is being hauled in. They hardly feel the cords drawing, yet they shine already. The inevitable mass disasters will not come in our time, nor in our children's. But we and our children must watch the net draw narrower, government take all powers, or revolution, and the new government take more than all, add to kept bodies, kept souls, or anarchy, the mass disasters. These things are progress. Do you marvel our verse is troubled or frowning while it keeps its reason? Or it lets go, lets the mood flow in the manner of the recent young men into mere hysteria, splintered gleams, crackled laughter. But they are quite wrong. There is no reason for amazement. Surely one always knew that cultures decay and life's end is death. And this, like Shine Perishing Republic, is really a poem for the present moment, you know. Got this gorgeous evocation of the sardines. I'm not sure why I can't scroll up. There we go. Of the sardines and of the purse sen net closing in around the sardines beating from one wall to the other, the phosphorescent water to the pool of flame, and then this amazing imagery of the the sea lions coming to watch, sighing in the dark, and the vast walls of night standing erect to the stars. That's just absolutely gorgeous, you know, and weird. You know, like that vast noise, and then this fiery frenzy of the sardines trying to escape and knowing that they can't and beating up into flame. And then the incredible switch to describing the city like the sardines, all of us in our cities like sardines caught in a Seine net, frantically beating up into a flame, you know. And the ominousness of the end, again, evoking death, evoking, first of all, chaos, breakdown. I can't scroll down. There we go. Yeah. And he's talking, so in the old book that I have, Stallion and Other Poems, is a reissue of the original Stallion and Other Poems. And his publisher, the Modern Library, had asked him to revise the poems, and he wrote, I can't revise the poems, but I'll agree to write an introduction. So in this introduction, he talks about what he hates about modernism. And it's exactly what he's talking about here. In his view, the modernists were the recent young men who were, you know, full of hysteria, splintered gleams, crackled laughter. And he totally rejects that. He says that's a breakdown of the ancient role of poetry. And it itself testifies to the breakdown of the culture in which these poets are, you know, coming into their voices. So that's his opinion of modernism. He's very anti-modernist. He says they're quite wrong. There is no reason for amazement. And then the same thing that we get in Shine Perishing Republic, that we get over and over, this idea that with the passage of time, everything made, you know, carved rock, poems, cultures, cities, decay, they all come to nothingness, and life's end is death. So, thoughts on this poem? Yeah, Douglas.
Yeah, so the beginning of it makes me remember a time when I watched, I think they were fin whales, but there was some kind of a smallish whale um, uh, herding a big school of smaller fish, and they were swimming around and round and round this body of fish, and every once in a while they'd go zooming right through the middle of it, and one of them would keep going around, the other one would eat, and then they'd switch places and charge through the school of fish. And then the other thing made me think of was at the beginning when he starts talking about um, the cities and stuff like that. I thought, oh come on, that's just bullshit. Nobody's living on their own. But he he takes it further, and I see his where he's going with it. But my first reaction was not very sympathetic.
Yeah.
I had I have a personal reflection on this, which is probably not of any interest to you guys, but have you all experienced phosphorescence
Yes.
at sea? Um, I'm. Are you seeing for some reason? Anyway, phosphorescence is created by bioluminescent algae, and it's not really that well understood, but they have actually little outings in Tomales Bay at certain times of the year where you can take kayaks out in the middle of the night and see the phosphorescence. And there's one of our experiences where was that, of course, we had saltwater head and saltwater sinks, and so if you use the head, you would get a bunch of little sparkly things come up in the head as you flushed it, or in the sink. Um, they're really microscopic, but when they're lit up, they look like they're maybe an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch. And then so we saw a lot of that. And then the sailors of old called them sea stars. And the other really magical experience we had was off of Oman in the Indian Ocean, where I came up. I was on watch in the middle of the night, and I came up, and the ocean was from horizon to horizon. It was white, and it turned out I reported it, and I said I don't know what that was, and I've never heard of it. And when I got back, a marine biologist whose specialty was bioluminescence got in touch with me, and he said he wanted to know exactly the latitude and longitude and the time. The Zulu anyway, so that what he was doing was trying to coordinate accounts of bioluminescence sightings with satellite data. So he was trying to, find. He went on to try to find my sighting and coordinate it with some kind of satellite picture of the sea at that moment. And he wasn't able to find it, but it was very fun to talk to him about it. And it's not very well understood. It's thought it's a bloom of just like red tide. You know what that is?
Mhm.
It's like red tide, except instead of poisonous uh, algae, it's bioluminescent algae, and it's very weird to see the whole ocean glow from horizon to horizon. But it happens. I'm not
That's,
sure that adds to your understanding of the poet, but I had to bring it up.
it sounds really beautiful. It sounds so wonderful. But I especially like the idea of flushing the toilet and having all these little stars shooting around. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Douglas?
Yeah, and the Virgin. I was visiting my sister who was living in the Virgin Islands at the time, and working in a dark room there. And uh, when I was going to go back to the boat I was living on, I got into the dinghy, and when I took the first stroke of the oars, each oar had this whirlpool of light around it,
God.
and so I drifted instead of using the oars. I drifted and looked down, and I could see the little sparkles that Tony describes. And the other thing that we used to do was take a small boat along near the shore, and every once in a while to hit the floor of the boat with an oar, and sharks who were basking on the bottom would just take off suddenly, and you could see their shape in the luminescence, and then the trail that they left behind, and it was pretty astonishing, actually.
That's pretty cool. Leslie?
Um, well, I was thinking about the images in this poem, and there's such a sudden shift between the lyrical words in the first description and then this sort of more industrial language in the second part. But the person is, it's a circle. So you've got this circle,
Mhm.
and he seems to sort of he's always talking about the circle of life if we're going to do the Lion King, but he doesn't let it come back full circle. He acts as if it's just death. And the idea, I mean, yes, cultures die, civilizations die, and then something else comes along. It makes way for something else. And I mean, he doesn't mention that here, but he doesn't seem to be, he's very accepting of the end, but I'm wondering if he felt that it was not necessarily a bad thing because there would be a continuation of some sort of civilization or some sort of life.
Makes me think of Ozymandias.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think, of course, the person is also a circle in a different way. It's like it's a constricting circle, you
Right.
know?
It's closing in. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. He's using the circle, but it's in you're trapped,
Yeah.
and these people are trapped in the city. And he certainly he makes interdependence a very negative thing, which,
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that not everybody can be a survivalist living on top of their mountain, but I'm not sure.
He's very
Hardly anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not, and he's not, we're not seeing the Osmanlians say, hey, we were going to be great and now we're not great, but there's another civilization. This is really is a tightening. Don't you get the, I agree with you, Leslie. That's a very industrial view. The machines and we're interdependent and you can't, um, but he doesn't relieve us from that,
No.
right?
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah, we don't get any relief from that.
There's a strong influence of Oswald Spengler, The Decline of the West. And Spengler's organic view of cultures, theoretically means that something does grow after a culture dies, but he isn't very interested in that. He sees Western culture as one great uninterrupted arc from Gothic childhood to Goethe and Napoleon, is the way Spengler puts it. And now it's going down. And, I think Spengler was way too pessimistic and he sort of wanted to force history into a pattern. But from the little I've read of him and about him, I think he's really a more interesting writer than one would think. But that is a weakness of his, that he is so interested in decline that he forgets that his theory is actually supposed to be a cyclical theory and he doesn't go into anything about the next cycle. He was also very cynical about the modern technological West. He advised young men to give in to Caesarism because there was nothing else, and to become engineers and scientists and work in technology again because there was really nothing else. But Spengler died in 1936. He was not a Christian. He was, in fact, an atheist. But one of the last things he did was this very quixotic attempt. He wrote to the Pope and suggested that the Pope should excommunicate Hitler. So even for Spengler, there was some sense of hope, even in somebody that he probably should have been more cynical about than he was. And I think you get that with Jeffers too. There's something really powerful he wants to affirm, but when he gets to the historical aspect of it, something stops him from even, looking beyond.
Tony, let's go out of screen sharing now, okay? I just
Okay.
want to say, given what we're doing to the environment, this does not at all seem exaggerated to me. I mean, we're facing mass disasters, and there's no necessary next civilization that's going to come. Gary Snyder says there will still be algae, and I agree with that. But it's not necessarily going to be a new, better race of people,
I agree.
something like that. So, I mean, I guess I can really emotionally accept the pessimism of this poem, given the environmental situation and given what's happening right now in culture in so many places, not only our own. Julia, talkative as always. You're mute. You're mute.
Well, I'm with you in thought.
I just want to make sure that you have a chance to say stuff if you want to.
Okay.
And Barry, you've been pretty quiet today. Are you having thoughts about all this?
Enjoying the poems today. He's very good. I mean, I really like the lyrical lyricism of his writing. Um, I'm a little. I mean, I'm a little on this one. I'm a little troubled with the analogy, that he's making to civilizations. Um, I think it's it seems like a little oversimplified to go from this fishing analogy to now describe civilizations, but it's powerful.
But just think about, those pictures that we see. Imagine standing on a dark mountaintop and looking at Tokyo or Los Angeles or something
Oh, yeah.
spread out, with these flashing lights as far as the eye could see. And then around that is darkness, or the sea lions sighing at the edges. It just seems to me to be such a brilliant metaphor for kind of the shape of a city and the interconnectedness of a city, with the roads and the lights and the towers and the functions and all of that. And then around that, the darkness,
Who are the sea lions sighing on the outside of the
Yeah.
cities?
Yeah.
The thing is that the interconnectedness is what created the city, and it also created art and
Yeah.
beauty and all these things. And it's not necessary. I mean, even though yes, it's maybe impermanent, it's not necessarily doomed to extinction.
Well,
We
I
have
think right
choices.
now I'm more in Ann's camp. There are three things on the horizon that are going to be catastrophes that are unlike anything the human race has had to, Homo sapiens has had to face since the Ice Age, and probably worse than the Ice Age, and that is uh, global warming, plastics, and now the Kessler syndrome. You know what that is?
No.
This is where all the satellites run into each other, and that's considered more and more likely every year, that all it takes is a couple of satellites to run into each other, and then with the debris there's a cascade uh, of crashes, and it takes out the entire satellite constellation. And the problem with that is that that's where our GPS is, that's where our finances are, and it will have a devastating effect on civilization. So, but here's the good news, Barry. There is some light at the end of the tunnel. We'll all be dead.
Like the
You
dinosaur.
know what they say, the light at the end of the tunnel is an oncoming express train.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
That's
I think
actually a Robert Lowell line.
A book that I read that really impressed me was called Rare Earth. It was written by some, I can't remember their names. They were in Washington State University, and it was written, I'm going to say at least 10 or 15 years ago, but it talked about 13 different extinctions that our world has gone through. But not everything's gone. And because of the changes after the extinction, then new life forms. I mean, you wouldn't have mammals if you hadn't had some of the earlier extinctions.
Right.
And we're thinking about this from the point of view of humans. It could be that every single last human would die. It seems like most of the post-apocalyptic literature doesn't present that case. Then Jeffers could have his real independent people living, back to the past where they could be pioneers on the prairie or whatever. But other life forms, whether it's going to be the cockroaches will take over or whatever. But eventually, even if the atmosphere is poisoned for humans to breathe, something will live. And I have a very expansive view. So even if this world doesn't do too well, something's going to still be going on somewhere.
I want
And
to end by reading you to the Stonecutters, which is very much along the lines of what Leslie's saying and what you're all talking about. And this is the other one that I sent today. Just a little
I
short.
want to make, can I
Oh, go
just
ahead.
say
Sure.
one more
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
before we move on? It occurred to me, and I forgot to say it. In the case of humans, everything is of our own doing. These fish are being caught in the nets that
Exactly.
are, you can say that it's symbolic of nature itself because it's an outside force. It's not something they did. Everything we have done to destroy the world is our own doing. It's not something that's coming from outside.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all. That jolly thought is all I had to add.
If the cities are a person, we have created the person as well as
That's
being the
right.
fish
Right.
captain.
To the Stonecutters.
Okay, let me
Cutters
get that
fighting.
up.
No, you don't need to. I'm just going to read it. We're not going to talk
Okay,
about it.
all right. Okay.
Stonecutters fighting time with marble. You four defeated challengers of oblivion eat cynical earnings, knowing rock splits, records fall down. The square-limbed Roman letters scale in the thaws, wear in the rain. The poet as well builds his monument mockingly. For man will be blotted out, the blithe earth die, the brave sun die blind, his heart blackening. Yet stones have stood for 1,000 years, and pained thoughts found the honey peace in old poems. So that's a little bit of a lyrical ending. Yeah, Leslie.
well, as soon as I read this, I was thinking about Shakespeare's sonnet. Is it 55? The not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes.
Mhm.
And the comparison between what my poem is going to last longer than the monuments that are all carved in stone and everything. But he's acknowledging that it may not be around forever, but it's going to be around a long time, long enough to bring solace
Mhm.
through and it's interesting that it's the old poems, not the modernist poems, but
Yes,
the
exactly.
old poems.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you. It's really nice to be back among you. Douglas, stay warm. And let's finish up with Jeffers on Thursday, okay?
Okay.
And I'll be sending you some more stuff.
On Tuesday.
Everybody. Bye.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah, that one, the next one.